Hi, Indy. Are you there?
Hey, Joe. Yeah, I'm here. Welcome.
Great, great. Awesome. Okay. Hello, folks. So, tonight, what I'm going to do is let you share because I didn't have much chance to share point. So, you can do the sharing tonight. And we're going to start. And why isn't my guest in the stream?
I know.
Hello,
Why
Indy.
aren't I
Oh,
in the screen? Hi, I'm here.
why?
I can hear you.
Okay. There you are.
Hey, there
You're
I
in the
am.
now. There it is. We're
Beautiful.
both in the stream now. My
You can
guest,
see my bird.
my guest for tonight, okay, is Indy Left. Indy Left is the publisher of IndyLeft.news. And when Indy will talk to us, you will see the bird. You will see the bird getting active. Say something, Indy.
All right, Joe. I'm excited to be here. Really appreciate you having me on and excited to talk to everyone today.
And I appreciate your coming on very, very much.
Yeah, we've been trying to do this for a while, I know.
Indy Left is a behind the scenes supporter of many of the YouTube personalities that you have come to know and to love. And he also has been supportive of me in a number of endeavors, in particular, the Replace Pelosi January 3rd endeavor, and then Force the Vote, which you all know about, I think, extremely well. So I'm very grateful to him for his support, not just for me, but for a whole bunch of people on the left. So I thought it would be fun and it would be a great thing for us to have a conversation tonight. And I'd like to start by finding out what exactly Indy Left is about, what his vision for it is, and why he does it. And I know he's going to be happy to talk to us about that. So, Indy, over to you now.
Cool, Joe. I really appreciate it. So it really started back in about November 2019. I started to get an idea to create a podcast, a weekly podcast summarizing some shows on the left that I was listening to. And I was talking to a lot of my friends and family, and I noticed that they really weren't listening to the same kind of shows that I was. They were mostly consuming mainstream corporate news media and believing what they were told, not realizing that there was an entirely different set of conversations that were being had out there, and that there were a different set of problems that corporate media wasn't addressing. I was listening to at the time the progressive left, or at the time was the progressive left, more of the TYT side, the David Pakmans, the Kyle Kalinskis, Humanist Report, and others. And I was looking for one central location to kind of summarize where can I find the best content from all these places in one place. And I noticed it didn't really exist. So started creating lists of some channels and started listening to all the podcasts. And after 1 week, I'm like, you know what? There's so much content. I don't know what to do with this. And I kind of put it on a shelf for a few months. And then Bernie got knifed, and I was a big Bernie supporter. I think we all were. We were all energized and excited in 2020 by the campaign in 2019 by the campaign. I was a donor, and then early 2020 happens. Look what happens in February, and we start with Iowa, and they kind of rogered the left, but Bernie had a strong showing in Iowa. He has a strong showing in New Hampshire. Then comes Nevada, and everybody's super excited. And then the wheels fall off. And I watched the entire thing, of course, just like we all did. And I was crestfallen to see it all happen.
I
And
got very depressed about the whole thing for a little while.
yeah, and I just, I said, what is it that we can do to combat this media machine? Because one of the big factors, and I think why Bernie was sunk, was because of the influence of corporate media in the narrative out there, in calling him a crazy, in demonizing the word socialist, in not reflecting that his policies were actually popular with the majority of the country. So I started to seek out and create an environment to amplify the voices that were championing those type of messages. Um,
Uh,
and
and,
so I created a website. Go ahead.
and so you've been amplifying us ever since.
Well, originally I created a website and I registered it on February 12th of 2020 as progressivenewsdaily.net. And I operated as a once daily newsletter for about 6 or 7 months. And then I realized that the platform I was using actually had the ability to put out 2 newsletters a day. And I realized also that the news cycles were moving so quickly that when I summarized the news stories that had come out in the morning that were in the newsletter, that by evening time, when I was writing my summary, there was a whole new set of stories that needed to be summarized that weren't being grabbed. So that's when we upped it to twice per day.
Okay, I have a short question about that.
Sure.
Okay. It seems to me that I get more than 2 newsletters from you every day. I seem to be getting a lot of different things from you. But why is that?
Well, there are newsletters from the main website. That's independentleft.news. There are only 2 that come out per day. However, we're on a bunch of different platforms and properties. Uh, we
Ah,
are we are on Substack, for example, which is one of a more recent endeavor that I jumped into as a different way to summarize the top articles and videos that are coming out of each edition. Independentleft.news itself is a fire hose of content, videos and articles primarily, but also some podcasts that are mixed in there if they hit the RSS feed. And there can be upwards of 75 videos and 75 articles in every edition twice per day. It's an enormous amount of content to consume, and nobody can possibly consume all of it at once. So I try to go through and curate and position and reposition it so that the stories that are most important to the people I think are reading it, as well as to me, are amplified and pushed to the top. And then once that happens, we then put out a summary on all the social media channels. And that's done via image, via video, via post, linking all the different images, as well as the website itself.
how do you find the time to do it and still do your regular job?
Well, I have a team of dedicated volunteers that works that also believe in this as well. But originally, I dedicate my time. I don't sleep very much. I have a wonderful wife and family that understand that how important this is to me and how important this is to everyone. And we make that sacrifice, and it's something that I'm happy to do and willing to do. And the truth is even if I wasn't publishing it, I would probably be sitting in front of my computer consuming it. I just decided to do something with everything that I'm consuming.
And that, of course, is a wonderful thing to do.
I appreciate it.
So I wanted to talk with you about where we are now in politics. Okay, and what you think the Biden administration, okay, and the Congress can do to help solve our most serious problems, such as the problem of getting health care to every American free at the point of service, such as a Green New Deal, such as the problems of justice for all, paid family leave, student debt elimination, free college for everybody, all the different things that are really critical for having a real democracy. And incidentally, I should have mentioned actually creating the infrastructure we need for real democracy which we do not have at this point.
Correct.
We have a democracy that is dying in darkness right now. Though there is a sufficient amount of light that we can see it dying. And I guess that's about the best thing that we can say about it. So what do you think are the steps that the administration should be taking, that Congress should be taking, in order to make this all better?
Well, I got to be honest that right now I don't put a lot of faith or hope or stock in what the Democratic Party is doing. I mean, they have control of the presidency. They have control of Congress. They have a majority. They can do quite a bit, and they're choosing not to on a daily basis. And they have the they have the built-in excuse and obstruction of Sinema and Manchin, of course, but that's just an excuse.
Right. Okay. So I completely agree with that analysis. I mean, I give that analysis myself all the time. However, we are here and we are looking at that. And one of the things we should probably be doing is telling them what we think they should be doing to give us what we need. And since you're so active in consuming so much of the news and so much of the problems every day, I thought it would be a good thing to ask you, what are the practical steps that they could take if they wanted to solve these problems?
Well, they could have started by passing a $15 minimum wage, which was even inadequate because it was actually only going to get us to $15 4 years from now, when $15 isn't even enough today, is the truth. But that would have been a good start, because that was attached to a must-pass bill, and they chose to not attach it that way, and Bernie allowed it to go through reconciliation, or to not go through reconciliation, requiring a 60-vote minimum, and knowing that wasn't going to pass. The parliamentarian, they're using the excuse of the parliamentarians. So one of the practical things they could certainly do is fire the parliamentarian and get somebody in who can interpret the rules better, because I don't understand how a $15 minimum wage is not a budget-affecting item on a reconciliation bill. That's absolute garbage.
Okay, but also, there's no need to fire the parliamentarian. The parliamentarian is only an advisor.
Well, you can ignore the parliamentarian, but better yet, clearly they're making bad decisions and they're giving bad advice, incorrect advice. So therefore, that is a fireable offense. I have no problem getting rid of this person, because they've now tried twice to intervene.
Yes, I mean, I don't have any disagreement on that score.
Okay, next I would say the infrastructure.
The only point I was making, was that there's really no need to fire her, because it is Biden's responsibility and Harris's responsibility and Schumer's responsibility to do the right thing in this situation and not to take the advice of the parliamentarian.
Right, but any one of the 50 Democrats could then utilize that as the excuse. What you need is somebody to sign off on that and say it's clean.
One of the 50 Democrats can take that advice, but that's not enough to stop the rest of the Democrats from calling on them to vote along with the majority and to pressure them to do so.
Well, they've already kind of started to do that. You know, I know that at one point, Harris had gone to West Virginia once. That was just a warning shot, we know. Maybe it was even Biden had gone to West Virginia. Again, that was just a warning shot, but we all know they're all part of the same club.
Harris went to West Virginia. Okay, but also there are things they could do in other ways. For example, let's go back to the American Rescue Plan. When the American Rescue Plan got out of the House, okay, and went to the Senate, the $15 an hour piece was in there.
Yep.
Schumer chose to take it out, probably because he was talking to Biden and Harris, and they told him to take it out because surely Joe Manchin was going to vote against it if the $15 an hour was there. Now, Schumer didn't have to take it out. He could have put it on the floor as is. And then Sinema and Manchin, okay, and the others would have had to vote against the whole American Rescue Plan. And to explain to the country they did that because they were opposed to the $15 an hour. I think they all would have folded, every last.
I disagree. I think that Joe Manchin revels in being the hated one, in being the villain who ends up tanking legislation on behalf of his donors, because it's going to end up having him run for president in a few years, probably. That would be my guess.
He may revel in that, but the fact is, all those people in West Virginia needed the $1,400 check. They needed the other elements of the ARP. And Joe Manchin would have been very, very, very unpopular in West Virginia if he had tanked that particular bill. And the parliamentarian would not have served as any excuse.
Right.
She would not have served as any excuse. The fact remains, any Democratic senator who voted against that bill would have the blame for tanking the ARP. And Biden would have been forced then to go and to pressure them. Here's another thing, okay, that could have been done. Even let's say it was taken out in the Senate and the ARP was passed and it was sent back to the House. Then the CPC could have balked and said, we're not voting for this bill. We're putting the $15 an hour minimum wage right back in it. And we're sending it to the Senate again and see what they do. I'm sorry, the CPC could have done that. The squad could have done that.
There's no reason why the House had to accept what was sent back. You're right. But that could have potentially tanked the entire thing. And again, people are hurting. This is their excuse for settling, which I understand, but you've given people so little already. Hold out.
Yes, I completely agree with that. But at some point,
you have to hold out. Yes, I agree.
The left has to start playing hardball. And that was the point. $15 an hour was so popular across the country. That was a great time to play hardball. Sanders had the power to do that. The progressives in the House had the power to do that. And they did not do it. So Biden got his ARP through, and also he was encouraged to do his song and dance with Joe Manchin and with the Republicans to try to get a bipartisan bill through. Okay, but if the progressives at the start had said, we're not playing this game, $15 an hour was in the platform. You, Joe Biden, you promised $15 an hour to the American people.
I promised a public option.
Yeah, but we're not.
He promised student debt. He promised student debt relief.
Passing the ARP without the $15 an hour in it.
They haven't.
They could have served
notice.
They could have served notice on him. Right at that point.
Joe, when have they once actually threatened to torpedo legislation over anything?
Never. That's my point. What we're trying to do here is we're not trying to condemn the lefty people. We're not trying to condemn anybody. What we're trying to do is to lay out what people should have done, what they could have done, what they could do now to change the situation. Because as the situation exists right now, they are headed for a disastrous defeat in 2022. And if that defeat occurs, we won't be able to do anything about the goddamn climate until 2025 or 2026 at the earliest. And that's much too long. We're probably all done for. So
I agree with all of that.
we have to start making a lot of noise now about what they could do now and what has to be done now and
What
how
they could have done,
cannot
Joe, they
go
should have
on
started
forever.
6 months ago. They should
They
have started
could have
this 6
started
months ago.
6 months ago, but 6 months have passed, so we have to address what can they do now. Okay, and I'll tell you one thing that I think they can do. I think Joe Biden can immediately order the Secretary of the Treasury to order the director of the Mint to mint $100 trillion platinum coin. Why is that a useful thing to do?
Well, because then I understand what you're saying. I think it's easier to enact 1881A right now, give everybody Medicare for all, and suspend all student debt. That would be two easy things to do right now.
But you can do a lot of easy things right now that Joe Biden should do, and I completely agree with you about him using an executive order and the authority under the Social Security Act, 1881A, to give everybody Medicare right now. He couldn't give them Medicare for all under that authority. In other words, he couldn't give them the equivalent of HR 1976.
Sure.
But he can give everybody free Medicare now as defined under the old Medicare law. He can do that. So that would be a great thing to do. The reason why I would do the $100 trillion coin first is that it takes only a couple of days to do, and also it removes any threat of a debt ceiling crisis. It removes all the justifications of the centrists, okay, and the Republicans, but just all the BS about, oh, we're going broke and the debt is so high and we don't have any money and we can't afford this and we can't afford that. And of course, I'm very familiar with the MMT stuff, okay, and very familiar with the idea that all that is BS. But guess what? The Republicans was standing there in front of the country today, and they were doing austerity mongering, and they were talking about the debts, and the deficits, and our grandchildren, and the whole mess of fairy tales they usually tell. And they were doing.
They do that every time a Democrat's in office. That's par for the course.
That's par for the course. But the point is, they still think there are enough people who believe that they can stand up there and go through this song and dance all the time about there's no money. And that is affecting politics. It still affects politics. And what the $100 trillion coin would do is it would show everybody that the money is there, that it's in the Treasury spending account right now. The money to deficit spend, the money to pay back the $28 trillion of debt that we have now. Not to pay it back overnight, because that would flood the economy with money. You don't want to do that. What you want to do, though,
what about our foreign debt? Don't you think our foreign creditors might want some of that $100 trillion themselves?
Our foreign creditors will get paid when the debt instruments fall due. They have no legal basis for requesting payment before that. Now, however, there will be $6 to $7 trillion worth of debt paid off in the first 6 months anyway, because we have all this short-term debt, okay, that's hanging.
Correct. Credit card debt, auto loan debt.
No, I'm not talking about
medical debt.
I'm not talking about auto loan debt, medical debt now. I'm talking about federal debt instruments, Treasury debt instruments. That's what adds to the $28 trillion. That's what the $28 trillion is. It's the Treasury instruments that are out there that are unpaid. And that's what they're foaming at the mouth of. That we owe $28 trillion. How are our grandchildren going to pay that off?
No,
Well,
it's the ledger, as one of our old friends likes to say. That is only the addition, the sum total of everything that we've ever spent in history, less taxes.
right. But you cannot tell that to people and have them be comfortable with it, because the federal government still is on the hook to pay back the 28 trillion dollars, at least according to them. That's what they see. So when the Republicans say, well, our grandchildren are going to have to pay it back, that has some credibility for them. That someday somebody is going to have to pay that back. But if you mint the $100 trillion coin, the money is there in the Treasury spending account to pay it back. But right now we aren't going to pay it back right now. We're only going to pay it back as it falls due. But the point is, you can always point to the money sitting in the account. Okay, at this point, and you can always say, you see, the money is there. There's no debt problem. It's all good. We're going to pay it off as it falls due. And so that takes that issue off the table. The debt terrorism is off the table, and the deficit issue is off the table. And then you can say, when we deficit spend, that money goes to you in the private sector. We can target it to poor people. We can target it to working class people. We can target it to middle class people. And we can tax too. We don't tax for revenue. We do tax in order to make our democracy more viable, because extreme wealth is a threat to our democracy. Okay, so the point being, it's an easy thing to do. It's solely within the authority of the president. It takes that set of issues off the table. And by the way, it unhorses Sinema and Manchin too, because they're always talking about the size of the deficit and the size of the debt. It weakens their position.
They're just going to talk about it as spending. That's all. They won't talk about it as debt. They'll say our spending is out of control. They'll turn into Republicans. I mean, and then what are you going to do when a Republican comes into office in 2024 or 2028 and they decide to mint a $500 trillion coin? I mean, this will never stop, Joe. I really don't think that this is the idea.
$500 trillion coin, it doesn't matter. It can't be spent. It can only be spent if the Congress appropriates the money. The fact that the $100 trillion is in there doesn't mean the executive can spend it. The executive can spend it to pay off debt, and the executive can spend it to spend congressional appropriations. That's all. If $6 trillion of debt, let's say, for example, $7 trillion of debt is due the first year, $7 trillion can be paid back for the debt of the first year. If the federal budget for that year is $6 trillion, then $13 trillion can be paid back the first year. $87 trillion still remains, okay, after that. So they can only spend what they were going to spend anyway.
Right, but then as they continue to spend down against that ledger, and then okay, so now we get down, and now it's down to 5 trillion and down to 2 trillion, and now we have less than 1 year's worth. And what do? The president just makes another $500 trillion coin.
But what's wrong with that?
Because it's kicking the can down the road, because I agree with you, but it's a perpetual debt cycle. I understand what you're saying.
It's not a debt cycle. It fills the public purse. It just shows that the public purse is always full. It just shows that Article 1, Section 8 is what actually determines the money we have, because that money was created under Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, and the authority given to the president by the Congress to mint those particular coins. Okay? In other words, it's only about that. It's only about what's in the Constitution. It's not about anything else. Anyway, okay, let's say we mint the $100 trillion coin, and let's say we give everybody Medicare free under Section 1881A. Mm-hmm. Then where do we go from there? Say that's the first two steps. Okay, where do we go from there?
Well, we figure out the housing crisis would be probably a good thing to figure out. We get everybody off the streets, and we figure out how to get everybody fed and address some of our food waste. I mean, there are so many potential issues we can
There are
address,
so
but of
many
course, we've got to look at
potential
climate
issues.
too.
So many potential issues and so many potential problems. But the first thing to do after those two things, which remember, are only going to take 2 or 3 days. Okay, the next thing to do, okay, is to get rid of the filibuster. At the very least, for the voting rights bills, because we have to protect the possibility of democracy. Granted, we don't really have a democracy, but we have to protect the voting rights. We have to protect the Republicans from just saying, well, we're not going to accept the certifications of these votes. We're going to throw it into the legislature, and they're going to overturn the decisions people made in the voting booths. We have to stop that, and we have to stop that right now. That is an emergency. That has to be done right now.
I'm a big fan of hand-marked, hand-counted paper ballots, and I honestly think we need to get rid of the machines because all the machines are vulnerable, or we have open-source machines with complete 100% audits. Because right now, it's a total mess.
Yeah, right. And I completely agree with that, too.
But it allows the right wing the excuse to say that, to run these and to say that it wasn't legitimate because it's run by mostly Republicans, but also some corporate Democrats. Look at what the shadow app was developed. Although, again, ES&S is a much larger problem than Dominion, and nobody even talks about ES&S.
That's right. That's right. And you're absolutely right. And ES&S is an older problem than Dominion. I think they've been a problem since the 1980s.
Definitely, but definitely 2000. I mean, we know for a fact that the Hanging Chads were ES&S.
Yes.
Okay, which was the Diebold systems going back to the 2000s, that these were all acquired and merged, that you had people that were running these companies that linked all the way back to the Abramoff scandal. And a lot of them are wealthy Republican donors.
Okay, but we can't pass bills to address that, okay, until we at least get an exception for the filibuster when it comes to voting rights and voting rights bills. We have to get to Manchin and to Sinema and to some of the others, and we have to break them at least on that point so that we can
again, a ballot initiative might be the way to do it. You're not going to do it during this session, but a ballot initiative to remove that potential and have the American public direct democracy vote, which again, RIP to Senator Mike Gravel. I'm a big advocate for direct democracy as well.
Yeah, so am I, but that's not in the structure of the laws. It's not in the structure of the Constitution right now.
Yes. New laws would need to be passed in order to
new laws
for that.
But be passed, and to pass those new laws, you have to get rid of the filibuster because it has to be a 51-50 vote. So
getting rid of the filibuster is a serious danger because the minute that you lose power, you're going to see things very drastically changed in this country by a party that doesn't want to see things. They're just going to undo everything every 4 years or every 8 years or every 12 years or however it is. You put a filibuster in place, the minute you get a supermajority in all, or not even a supermajority, but a majority across all three. You see 2017. What do you think would have happened if we didn't have a filibuster in 2017, Joe?
What I think would have happened if we didn't have a filibuster in 2017 is exactly what did happen. I don't think the Democrats gained a thing from having the filibuster in 2017 because the Republicans were willing to override the filibuster whenever they had to override the filibuster. They have always done that. For the last 10, 15 years, they have done that. Whenever they wanted to override the filibuster, they created an exception.
They can't stop legislation. They weren't stopping legislation from coming to the floor. The Democrats didn't stop anything from coming to the floor, but Republicans did it to Democrats all across the board. And until something like that's going to change, they're going to be playing on the losing side. And they're going to be the Washington Generals to the Harlem Globetrotters. And maybe that's all intentional.
Okay, Indy, I completely agree with everything that you said. But what I'm saying is, if we're going to lay out what has to be done now, one thing that has to be done right now that we have to call on Biden and call on the Congress to do is to get rid of the filibuster, at least for these voting rights bills, so the Republicans don't get to just walk in and take over the Congress, both houses of Congress, in 2022.
That sounds wonderful. That sounds awesome. It sounds awesome, except that we already know that Manchin and Sinema are going to protect the filibuster. So if you just try to get a carve out for the voting rights bills, their ground will not be as strong to stand on. They will look like they're in the wrong on that. No, what it's going to look like is that they're singling out one issue against what the Republicans are trying to, again, change voting rights. 100% agree. But they have Republican constituents that they're going to have to answer to as well. They don't just answer the Democrats.
The Republican constituents are not for fixing the vote. That's the Republican Party. Those are the people in the state legislatures.
I disagree with you. I think that you've had a lot of people that are protesting. And now, again, a lot of them do want to fix the machine, to eliminate the machines and add transparency. But a lot of them are also convinced that this entire election was not transparent and was not fair and legitimate. And what, there
are a lot of them who believe that. Okay, the Trumpists. But there are a lot of other people in the Republican Party and the independents who incline Republican on many issues, don't incline Republican on this issue. And remember, the members of the Republican Party are what? 26% of the electorate, okay, at this point? Even if 20% of them are with the Trumpists, there still is 80% of the electorate that's against what they're trying to do with the voting rights stuff.
Again, I would contest some of your numbers there. No, I agree with the 25% of being Republican. I would challenge the only 20%, because I'm seeing numbers that show more than half to 75% of registered Republicans right now believe that Trump had the election stolen from him. Though whether it was or it wasn't, we'll never know, because we'll never get a full audit. Okay. Right. The Maricopa County audit was only 1%. All of these audits are only a minuscule percentage of the vote. They're looking at image marking devices, and that could have been altered and manipulated. Anything that was connected to the internet potentially could have been manipulated. And I'm not a Trumper. I'm not a left-winger. I didn't vote for Trump, and I didn't vote for Biden. Okay. But I have serious questions about the 2020 election. I have serious questions about the 2020 primary that nobody wants to talk about at all.
Right. So do I, and I want to talk about it. Okay. But anyway, for now, 50% of registered Republicans is only 13% of the voting population, Indy. Only 13%. So even if they agree on that, then my argument is even stronger, because 87% of them 87% of the voters don't agree with them on that. They've got a minority.
There's no way there's that much suppression going on that you're suppressing 87 or somewhere close to 80% in order to get the Republican. You're talking about 87% of the entire country, not just the voting public. It seems, I would think.
Well, what I'm talking about here is when people self-identify as Republican voters, okay, there are 26% in the survey. Okay, there are a few more who are Democrats, like maybe 32%, okay, in the surveys.
Well, there's one that's pinned to my profile, actually, on my Twitter profile. It was a recent survey of Republicans, Democrats, and Independent. 30% Democrat, 24% Republican, 37% Independent, 5% other, and 4% no opinion.
Right.
I agree that the majority of the country is independent. However, they all either vote, most of them either vote Republican or Democrat, or they don't vote at all. And even though Democrats outnumber Republicans as a percentage, the way that, of course, the electoral votes work, and the way that the states are spread out, and the way that the electorate is spread, the Republicans end up with a majority. They have the majority of states right now. They have the majority of the voters, unfortunately, the people who actually do come out to vote.
Right.
So what we need to do is energize the independents.
Yes, we have to energize them. Okay, but let me ask you concerning your survey. Was that a general survey of the population, or is that a survey of the registered voters, okay, or voters who are likely to vote?
That is the Gallup poll under party affiliation. Great question. I'm not sure which one. It says, generally speaking, what do you think of yourself as, but it doesn't say specifically whether that's voters or everybody surveyed. I think it is likely voters.
Okay, so say it is, okay, the likely voters.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what you're telling me then is that 50% of the likely Republican voters seem to agree with the Trumpists.
That's about 12% from what it looks like here. Correct. And I get what you're saying, that it's still a minority, but somehow that minority is controlling the entire country.
Yes, the way things are working out now, they have a great influence. I wouldn't say they're controlling the entire country, because if they were controlling the entire country, there wouldn't be Biden in the White House, and there wouldn't be a Democratic Senate, and there wouldn't be a Democratic House. So they're not controlling. They have a tremendous amount of influence, but granted, when it comes to the state legislatures, they are predominant for various reasons, including the fact that they've been rigging votes since they gerrymandered things in 2011, because Obama completely blew everything in 2009 and 2010. I mean, politically, the man was terrible. I mean, when it comes to building political structure, okay, and influence, he was an idiot. He was good when it comes to popularity for himself. But in terms of building a political machine, that guy really stunk. He didn't know.
All he wanted to do was be everybody's friend. He wanted everybody to like him, when the Republicans were never going to go along with anything. We begged him for 2+ years to do something without them and to move forward without them, but he wouldn't, because he wanted to get that coalition on board, which never happened. And here we are today because of it. I mean, we saw government shutdowns, we saw record filibusters, we saw record obstructionism, and still he wanted to give and give and give. We saw a cabinet that was completely staffed and recommended by Goldman Sachs and Citi.
By Wall Street, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, by Wall Street, absolutely. That's what we saw.
We saw 5 million families kicked out of their homes in the first 3 years, which, again,
it was all it was all terrible. The only reason why he won in 2012, because the Republicans ran, he looked at people even worse. That was a golden opportunity for them to win the presidency, but they didn't care to reach out and take it, okay, by nominating somebody decent. But anyway, that, okay, is water under the bridge. We have to get back to now, okay, and our situation now.
Agreed.
And it seems to me the necessary thing to do, first thing, is to get that carve out of the filibuster. Now, Biden will have greatly increased his popularity by minting the $100 trillion coin and by giving everybody Medicare. His popularity will shoot up if he does those two things. He'll be at 60 and 65%. He'll be in a much stronger political position to crunch on Manchin and Sinema to at least give him a carve out on the voting rights bills.
The entire right wing would be screaming, socialist, communist, complete lunatic. You're taking over, you're destroying our country. And the pushback would be enormous, to the point that they don't want that. They just don't. Joe, I love what you're saying here, but all of it is just, none of it's ever going to happen, because Joe's going to do zero of it.
That's the best we can do, Indy, because if we
the best we can do is shut it down. The best we can do is general strike October 15th. The best we can do is march for Medicare for all, like we did over the weekend. The best we can do is get our butts out in the streets. The best that we can do is to keep pressuring, to keep calling out the representatives, to keep sending letters, to keep making phone calls, strongly worded letters. Yes, I do think that's strong, but it's an inside out coalition. It's building coalitions.
Right. Okay.
It's going on these shows. It's screaming at them. It's protesting.
I'm in
and never
favor
letting
of the
never
general
letting up.
strike on October 15th too.
Mhm.
But I'm also in favor of doing the first two things, okay, that I mentioned, and
I'm
then
in favor of them, but nobody in
then
office is listening.
Then crunching as hard as we can crunch on Manchin and Sinema to get that carve out now. We have
Step
to
one
get
is
that
get
carve
them.
out now. And
Step
then
one,
we
Joe.
go
Joe,
on.
you're at step 5. Joe, you're at step 5. Step 1 is get them to listen to you because they're not doing that. That's step 1. We haven't done step 1, so we're talking about step 5, which is wonderful. How do we get them to listen to us?
How do we get them to listen to us? Well, the first thing I think we have to do is to get out there what we want them to do. Now,
We've told them everything. Oh, no. I'm sorry. That's unacceptable. We've been telling them, first of all, we made them campaign on it. All right. And they haven't done any of that. Debt ceiling, debt relief, $15 minimum wage. There's tons of things that you could do. Universal child care, which is now something that they're talking about adding. But now, again, Manchin and Sinema, they're going to tag the infrastructure bill because they don't want the reconciliation bill, and it gives them an excuse to walk away from the entire thing. Now, here's the other question. $15 minimum wage got torpedoed in the ARP, right? Why, when it got sent back, did the House not at least say, you know what, 15's not fair? I can understand why you would push back on 15. How about 13.50? We got 0. We're still at 725, and that was
I have a different view on that. If the House had come back with the $15 an hour in it and called for a conference, it's in the conference that you start to bargain. How about such and such the first year, such and such the second year, but such and such the third year. It's in the context of the conference between the two bodies that you hammer out that kind of compromise. However, if I was in the House, okay, at that time, okay, and they took the $15 out in the Senate, I would have pushed hard for a $17 an hour minimum wage and shove that right back into their faces, including Biden. You've got to serve notice on them that if they reject a reasonable demand, it's going to get worse, not get better for them. You don't conciliatory on them. You get tougher on them. But
you could have done that too, but that would have definitely torpedoed, and you'd end up right where you were, which was nowhere.
No, you go back and you give them $19 an hour. What I'm saying is you deliver the message to them.
Right, but they keep saying no.
They keep saying no. Let them say no, then they don't have the American Rescue Plan.
Right.
Biden needed the American Rescue Plan. He knew he needed the American Rescue Plan. He wanted that badly. So you tell him no until you get something acceptable about them. But
again, they have to want to make Nancy
he wanted something. Biden wanted something. Harris wanted something. They wanted something to show they were better than Trump. They wanted something to show they could handle.
Again, they didn't. They caved on must-pass bills. So if they're going to cave on must-pass bills, what can we expect them to do on not must-pass bills? We have another must-pass bill coming up again very soon.
Yes, we do. We have the reconciliation bill coming up, and that's another must-pass bill. So what do you do in the context of that must-pass bill? I think you come right back with the minimum wage, $15 an hour, included in that bill. Serve notice. You're not voting for that bill unless you put the $15 an hour right back in.
No, I want $20 an hour, and I want it 3 years from now, not 4. And I want more, not just 15, but 20.
Good.
3 years from now.
I'm in complete agreement with that.
Because 15 was 10 years ago already.
If you and I were in the Congress together, and you told me that then I would happily go along with you to
Well,
put $20 an hour in.
we
23.
can't get 8 of them to say no. Joe, how do we get 8 to say no? You and I, look,
How do we get
let's go back to December, where we actually put together a mass pressure campaign, and we actually got in front of, or at least in front of, an advisor to one of the people who did put an idea in front of them, and their answer was they didn't want to withstand the heat from leadership and corporate media.
right? I know.
And that's unacceptable. It's unacceptable.
I know
and we're going to have to continue to call that out.
I know that's what they did. But you raised the issue before. Okay, the issue you raised was general strike, October 15th. That's the way you get them to listen to us.
That's
And
one
I
way.
agree. I agree. That's the way you get them to listen to us.
That's one way. But we got out in the streets this weekend, and they weren't listening. Well, one of them kind of listened, but I don't want to get into that very much. Again, my opinion, and I was very clear about my opinion, is I think it's great that she came out and supported, but I think it was really disappointing the way that she did it. I wish that any one of them would have tweeted out even the slightest bit of support. Clearly, they were under orders from somebody not to.
Yeah, yes, I completely agree. They've been under orders for some time to ignore grassroots movements for Medicare for All. That was what Force the Vote was about.
It's not just for Medicare for All. They're ignoring grassroots independent media. They're ignoring the grassroots in general, unless it goes through their approved grassroots vendors, which is a joke. This is just like the DNC consultants.
Right. I certainly agree. So the first thing we have to do is to turn the Progressive Caucus and get them to start acting like the Progressive Caucus. How do we do that?
Tell them we're not giving them any more money. That's it. Hold their funding.
Not only tell them we're not giving them any more money, don't give them more money. Any more money.
They haven't gotten a dime from me.
Yeah. The only person who's gotten a dime from me of late has been Nina Turner, because I want her in. I think she'll have a good effect on some of the others. However, completely apart from that, yes, I agree. Dry up their money.
Meanwhile, AOC has one of the biggest war chests there is, and she's raising hand over fist cash. Here's the real reality, and I don't know if anybody's actually said this on any show yet. We're no longer their constituents, Joe.
Oh, I know
the left is no longer their constituency.
Yes,
the squad's constituency watches MSNBC and CNN. We don't vote for them anymore. We've stopped. Now, half the left is still out and championing for them, but those guys, they don't listen to them. They're not championing any of the issues that, they're hoping that years from now, after 3 more election cycles and multiple re-elections, that maybe they'll have enough power to maybe do something. If we want pretty please, you're never going to get rid of the corporatists in there, at least until you get a serious amendment or some serious changes. And how are you getting rid of leadership? Are they counting on just waiting for all of these 70-plus-year-old leaders to die off? And I'm serious. I am not joking.
Right. I know you're serious. Okay. I know you're not joking, and that may be what they're looking to do. But of course, we can't afford to let them do it, because it will be too late by then to do anything about the climate emergency. And
they're running out the clock, and they're helping to run out the clock. And here's my concern with Nina.
But by the way, people are still dying every day because there's no Medicare for all. And we see that happening. So we've got these 2 emergencies. We've got to do something about the 2 emergencies. I agree. The general strike on October 15th is very important. I also agree, to the extent we can do it, drying up their cash is very, very important. We have to stop the donations to them. Okay, at least among people who listen to us. We need a united front among the left people on social media to all come out and say, don't give any donations to CPC members until they begin to say no to the administration, until they begin to say no to too little, until they insist on Medicare for all, until they insist on a minimum wage that people can live on. Oh, and by the way, that $15 an hour minimum wage, we know people are not able to live on it, so certainly there should be a cost of living adjustment. $15 an hour should be the minimum in the lowest cost area of the United States, and there should be a cost of living adjustment upwards from that lowest cost area to every other area of the United States. In New York City, that minimum wage should be at something like $28 to $30 an hour.
Yep. And a lot of the cities and municipalities and states have taken it upon themselves, but none of them have gone anywhere close to that level or where it's actually necessary. It's all still kind of starvation or poverty wages. All the minimum wages are.
Yes, they are. So the question is, can we organize, maybe as part of the general strike, can we organize a 10 million person march on Washington, D.C.?
Not without at least the left coming together, and TYT's not even going to get together for a general strike. They're never going to talk about it. They're going to bury it, and they're going to laugh at everyone who does, shame them, and cajole them.
Yeah, but
how do you ally with people like that?
I don't want to ally with TYT.
But we have to. No, you just wait, Joe. You just said the whole left has to come together. How do you? I don't consider
TYT the left.
Yeah, but you're talking about the entire Democratic Party and everyone that wants Medicare for all. Guess what? A lot of TYT's audience still wants that, and without those guys, you're not going anywhere. You're not going anywhere because we are a small portion. We are a small portion of the left that didn't even have the influence to not allow the Democrats to sweep into the House, the Senate, and the White House. Okay? Let's call it for what it is. We have no power and no influence. Where do you start? You start by making noise. You start by general strikes. You start by wildcat strikes. You start by affecting what you can on a day-to-day basis. You start by educating, going out to the masses on a one-to-one basis, telling everybody to turn off their televisions, to unplug from Amazon, to unplug from everything that they possibly can that's being influenced by corporate propaganda and narrative, because they are selling a narrative, and they need to unplug from that because it all stems from that.
Okay, I completely agree with all of that.
And that's why I do what I do. That's why I aggregate and amplify the independent voices that are out there telling the truth, that are anti-corporate, that are anti-imperialist, that are not even anti-corporate, but anti-corporate greed to the level that people can't live. There are some corporations that do good, especially on the co-op level. People coming together to make products, to do things is not a bad thing. I'm not a demonization against companies in general or against profitability, as long as that profitability is shared with the employees and it's left over for after everybody is taken care of. The problem is our wealth hoarders, of course, in this country and in the world. We're going to need to do something about that. How do you do something about that? It sounds wonderful, but they already own everybody. They own all of it, as our friend George Carlin once said. May he rest in peace.
Yes, that's very true. Okay, so we discussed how we can get them to listen to us. Okay, at least what we can do to try to get them to listen to us, and what we can do in the short run, okay, to get them to listen to us. But we also have to get them to listen to us about particular things, okay, about policies. Okay.
No, the problem is they say the right things on policy until it comes into the vote, until it comes time to vote, and then they sign off on whatever Queen Nancy asks them to sign off on. Okay, and I wanted to get back a second to Nina Turner, because look, we all saw Nina Turner do some amazing things in 2020. But my feeling about Nina Turner today is she was already going to sign off on 75% of what Nancy Pelosi really wanted. What they're arguing about is the 25% where she's going to make people uncomfortable. That's really why the Democrats are spending gobs and gobs and gobs of money. She's going to sign on to 75% of their agenda.
Okay, I'm not going to disagree with that. I think she will sign on to 75%, okay, of their agenda. She'll get in there, and she'll have to contend with what the rest of the progressives think. And yes, she will sign on to 75%, okay, of their agenda. However, that's a lot better than what Chantal Brown will do.
I'm not arguing that. My concern is on a key vote. If the progressives end up losing, Nancy comes out just like they did with the Capitol Police spending bill. She rolled the progressives hard on that one. Okay, let's call it for what it is. All right, she went to each one of them and said, "Just vote with me on this one. Just vote with me on this one. Don't worry, it's never going to pass." And they all believed her. They got rolled, clearly, or they didn't communicate amongst themselves. Something happened. Because
Okay,
that thing should never have been allowed to pass.
Okay, let's talk about Nancy Pelosi. They have the votes to run a vacate the chair maneuver on her.
They're scared of her power. They don't want to be demonized on TV, Joe.
She won't have any power if they run a vacate the chair maneuver on her.
She's got $100 million in influence with everybody in Congress. It doesn't matter if she has the chair or not. She's got power.
No, it matters if she has the chair. If she's no longer the speaker, she won't have the same power. Okay, if Debbie Dingell
Of course
is the
not.
speaker, or Jan Schakowsky is the speaker, or even Rosa DeLauro is the speaker, we'll have a speaker much more friendly to Medicare for All and to the Green New Deal. And we'd have a speaker who is much more friendly in terms of playing tough with Joe Biden, especially if Debbie Dingell were the speaker, I think.
You and I are preaching to the choir on this one. The problem is we couldn't get anybody else to listen and join us. That's the sad reality.
We couldn't get anyone else, but still, we can advocate at this time for vacate the chair. We still can do that. It's apparent to everybody that Nancy has stood in the way of doing anything good.
Look what she did today. Just today. Complaining about student debt, saying we're never going to be that Biden doesn't have the power to cancel student debt, that it only should be an act of Congress, and we don't want to. And what about the people who don't send their kids to school and they shouldn't have to pay for everybody else's? Guess what? That's what we do with public school.
Oh, that's nonsense.
Oh, it's beyond nonsense.
That's pure nonsense. And by the way, the third thing that Biden should do is cancel all the student debt.
Yep. Think about how much money alone that would put into the economy. And they choose not to do it.
Has to get, if he wants to crunch Manchin and Sinema and save that Congress. And by the way, if Pelosi wants to save that Congress, they have to do these three things so that they become popular enough to really roll those two. It depends on where their popularity is. Who's going to be
the way they behave? There's no way.
Who's going to be afraid of them at 51 or 52% popularity?
It's none. That's what I'm saying. The way they've behaved, it almost seems like they're intentionally tanking so that they lose at least one of the houses, so that they then have an excuse not to govern for the following 2 years. Because this looks awful on them. It's shameful that they're not doing anything when they basically can do anything that they want to do right now. And it's not anything, but they have an agenda that they ran on, and none of it is getting done. We didn't even get $2,000 checks. We didn't even get $2,000 checks.
I know. I am so aware of that. Everybody is so aware of that. He broke his promise in everybody's face.
Not just one. Every promise. What promise hasn't?
Promise, but he broke that highly visible promise of $2,000.
And then told everyone that it was 2,000.
Yeah, it was 2,000 because he picked up the squad BS from before. I know.
Right. The 600 that Trump authorized. It's just
when he did that, but when he did that, there was no great outcry from people. They just accepted the loss of $600 a person for
There's
four
no great
people
outcry from people on
the
anything
loss.
right now.
And he did not do it for any good reason. He just didn't. I mean, I don't know what was going through his head. Did he really think it made a difference to the public fiscal capability to give people $1,400 instead of $2,000? He had to have known by then it didn't make a scrap of difference. So did he do it just to be mean? I mean, why did he do it? I don't even
No,
understand.
somebody walked into his office and said that. I'll tell you what. Somebody walked into his office and did the math. They did the math. $600.
It was such stupid politics.
$600 times 300 million Americans.
All these things that he's refusing to do. That is such stupid politics.
Yes, which is why I don't even talk about electoral politics. The truth is, Joe, I can't even talk about it right now because we have no effect on it. We have no impact on it. What we do have impact on is a lot of other things that we can affect, which is helping people that need help on a day-to-day basis. I have been a big advocate and actually doing myself mutual aid. Help the person next to you who needs to be helped. That is the way that, and then people listen to you who may not have been open to your message beforehand because they realize, wow, they're not crazy like I've been told on TV. They're actually really caring people that have been misunderstood and
that is true. You're completely right about that. And we have to do it. And it's something we have to continue with. But, the big but, we don't have the time it will take for that kind of activity to turn around enough people to have influence. So we've got to do some things now that will influence the vote and will influence the politicians and will scare them. We have to think about that kind of strategy and tactics right now because we cannot lose these 2 years without doing anything about the climate emergency.
Only one way to scare them. It's the money. And how do you shut down the money? You shut down the trucks. You need to shut down the trucks across the country. If interstate commerce freezes, you could get pretty much anything you wanted at Congress, and I think they'd cave because the money would dry up. Goods would stop being delivered.
That's what we have to do with the general strike. Okay.
Not even a general strike. No, a general strike is going to be incredibly difficult and is asking, I think, too much of too many people that don't want to stop working for whatever reason because they can't. But if we put a general strike fund together to allow for the truck drivers to be able to withstand and to support an industry that is critical in order to make this country move and to allow them all the time they need to hold out, I think we could get it done within a matter of weeks, if not a month, because I think the money would be so substantial on a loss on a daily basis. Now, somebody had a brilliant idea on how do we put a general strike fund together that would anywhere close to weather this kind of storm. And what we do is we ask every American to contribute $1 per month to the general strike fund for the next 3 months.
I'd be happy to do that.
Wouldn't everybody?
I would hope.
Wouldn't everybody?
It's certainly something that should be tried.
Okay, that's the way. That would be 200 million working Americans times $1 per month times 3 months is $600 million. I think that's a heck of a general strike fund.
Yes, that is a pretty good general strike fund. That could help a lot of people out.
Right.
And sustain a general strike for a while. Okay, so Bonnie, my wife, suggests we should boycott the internet, okay, and also shopping, in-person shopping, for 2 days a week, okay, until we get what we want. My personal feeling about that is that probably would not be enough because people would buy what they were normally going to buy during the other 5 days. So it would not shut down the economy necessarily. But perhaps if we did that to start with, it would get people paying attention.
I think you need to do it by industry. You do it by industry. Today, it's the truck drivers. Tomorrow, it's the grocery store workers. The day after that, it's the taxi drivers. And you basically hamstring an industry a day randomly until they cave. You have to find a way to exert pressure and to put pain in place. But you can't have everybody in the country absorb
something.
But you can't have everybody in the country absorb that same pain. It needs to be felt by the people at the top primarily, and the sacrifice needs to be made but absorbed by everybody else. Made by some and absorbed by everyone to allow for that for the people to make that sacrifice. That's the only way I could potentially see this even working. Otherwise, it's just a pipe dream that everybody wants to talk about.
Okay, I certainly think that's a good suggestion, a very good way of conceptualizing it. Okay, and I agree with you on it. We should talk a lot more about that.
For sure. The problem is, I don't know if we've got enough time between now and October 15th to get enough people on board to buy into this. But if we can start to get that $1 a month contribution to a general strike fund, I think that in a year, even, and now again, I don't know if we even have a year, but in X amount of time, if you had critical mass and you had enough people contributing to this, you would have enough money to allow for some general strikes to start to happen and to support the strikes that are already happening out there today, like in the PepsiCo plant in Indiana.
Yes,
that's still happening right now.
If we did that for 6 months, as you point out, it's $200 million a month. For 6 months, it's $1.2 billion.
That's right.
That's starting to get into real money for supporting strikes.
The only problem is who manages that money and how do you trust them?
Yeah.
And we got to think that one through.
Make it a
Of
church
course.
that handles the money.
Huh?
Make it a church that handles.
Oh God. Oh God.
No, I don't think a church would be trusted to handle money.
Oh, they'd love to handle the money, but I'm not letting them anywhere near it.
The person who might be trusted to handle that money is probably Reverend William Barber.
Yeah. He's amazing.
I would agree with that. I don't know if he would know how to oversee that. You would need significant financial experts and forensic accountants to be able to identify it. But it is doable. Look, but this isn't something you can do on GoFundMe. I don't know of any way to pay out on GoFundMe from $600 million. So we'd have to figure out a funding mechanism and set up some type of a corporation or some type of a co-op. You know who I might allow to run it? Professor Richard Wolff.
Yeah, me too. I'd allow Richard Wolff to run it. He'd love it.
I'll bet he would.
The fulfillment of a dream.
Right?
He could set up a co-op. That's a great suggestion.
What do you think?
I love it. I just love it. Hey, folks, what do you think about that one?
Boycott, boycott.
I think Prof. Wolff is well loved in these circles.
I think he is well loved in these circles. I think that he's well loved among people who may not entirely agree with him on all aspects of economics, such as myself. But over a very long period of time, he's shown a great deal of consistency and integrity.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And we do love him for that.
Well, the whole Democracy at Work educational offices and page and institute that he set up is tremendous. I highly encourage everyone to listen to and watch Prof. Wolff if you haven't already. Again, Democracy at Work is his primary vehicle, but he also has his own page, and he goes on as a guest on a ton of different shows. I know
Kay says,
Lana and Carmen watch it.
I love the Prof. Wolff. And
Carmen's not a Prof. Wolff
Carmen
fan.
says,
Huh?
no, I'm not a Wolff fan. How come, Carmen? Why aren't you a Wolff fan? And Lana says, to handle the dollars, yes, Barber and Marianne Williamson in or Cornel West.
Rohan Gray, sure, an MMT advocate, sure.
Raul, okay, or Raul Carrillo could oversee the dollars. I like Professor Wolf. The only thing I disagree with him on is the MMT stuff. Well, that may be, but that's not really an issue here. Okay, what's an issue here is a mutual aid fund for various people and administering the mutual aid fund, and
managing and investing the mutual aid fund, because
yes, and we need
you could invest that and double it in the 6 months if you played it right. Using their vehicle against them, which is even funnier.
Their vehicle against them, like what? Like the stock market, or
yep. Yeah, you Wall Street bets. You pick a stock.
Okay,
you decide to hodl, and you decide to go all in, and all of a sudden now you've doubled your money on that. Now you've got double the money in the strike fund. That is another potential. That just came to mind. Honestly, that had not been well thought out, but there's all kinds of potential when you've got now a kitty of $600 million. That's when people in Congress start to pay attention.
Right, and when you're adding $200 million a month, that's when people in Congress start to pay attention. I agree.
Right? And then you start to look and look, the people in France that are protesting in the streets on a daily basis, the yellow vests, they don't even have strike funds like this. Now, they do have government health care.
Yes, they do. And that helps. So Shane says, interesting idea to raise money to do the strike. I'm assuming the money would be used to keep people from going bankrupt during the strike and to pay for supplies. And Wolf wouldn't be a bad idea. He certainly wouldn't be. Shane says,
yeah.
Even create a co-op with Wolf, Barber, West, and allow them to manage it. Yeah, I completely agree. They are people of integrity, all three of them. Lana says, yes, they will need food, dollars for rent and bills, plus attorneys to get people out of jail if they march or protest. Yes. And Steve Wolfbrand says GameStop. Yeah, they could have made a lot of money on GameStop.
See?
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. And Carmen says, I mentioned the Strikers Fund when Jeffrey Ginter. Remember? I bet Bonnie remembers. What did Jeff Ginter have to say about that, Carmen? And Lana says, I cannot get arrested because I would lose my job, but I will contribute to a strike fund. We need to talk to Jeff Ginter. Well, we can always talk to Jeff Ginter. We can get him on here for another interview. We can have a panel discussion. We can have Indy come back and a number of other people come back, and we can get Jeff on. I'm sure he'd be glad to come on.
We can talk about solutions.
And we can talk about solutions, which, by the way, is what we have been talking about here, haven't we?
These are real world solutions. Again, the what ifs and how do we get them to listen to us? I think that is a real world solution. And then what do we do as a left movement? How do we better vet candidates that don't just say the right things, but will actually do the things that they say after they get in there? And that, look, Kyle Kulinski, even to his credit, said that that's the one thing they did not vet Justice Democrats on. They vetted them on policy only, and they did not look at leadership qualities. And it's been really sad to see. It's been disappointing that none of them have been willing to be that thorn in the side, that opposition to leadership, in order to have to get the committee assignments for influence, and those are really important. I agree. That is not what they were sent there to do.
That is right. But it is possible that if we can change the environment in the way that we just were talking about, if we can start to have an external force that was raising $200 million a month for mutual aid to enable strikes, okay, of various kinds, and to harass the establishment continuously, That might also change things in Congress, might change things in Congress among these very people. They might not be so afraid of challenging established power then if they
That
knew
would be the hope.
that kind of money. Well, I think that I can pretty well guarantee that if it's that kind of money in back of what we're doing, they're going to sit up and take notice.
No, we really need to get tight on our list of demands. I think that the website does a really good job of laying out some basic things that we need our government to guarantee to all citizens and to all people in the country. It is in line with what countries in other in the rest of the developed world are doing. But the other big thing that has to happen here in order to, and the how you're going to pay for it, in addition to MMT, is you do need to reduce spending. And where are you going to reduce spending? And I think
You
Joe,
don't need to reduce
you
government
do.
spending.
You need to reduce
No.
military spending.
Oh, well, that's spending, yes. What I'm
That's
talking
spending.
about,
That's what I mean. You need to reduce overall spending.
you
Okay, and
have
offset some of those increases
No.
with military cuts.
you don't have to reduce overall spending. You have to reduce spending on bad things that are harming us, such as our military spending. How is that harming us? It's harming us through the endless wars.
Yes, through the destabilization of other countries, through not putting our resources towards fighting climate change. There's a
Towards
lot of
fighting
different things that
climate,
it's
right.
costing.
But there's no lack, okay, of revenue. There's not only that the $100 trillion coin is one expedient, but when we take over Congress, at that point, the Congress itself can cause the Federal Reserve to add the monies for the budget and to pay off outstanding debt as it falls due with 2 sentences that can be added to every appropriation bill and every money bill. There is no need ever to cut spending for the sake of cutting spending. It's only spending of a particular kind which is bad. Spending that causes inflation, spending that causes war, spending that causes other negative impacts, spending that undermines our democracy. Yes, we need to cut all that spending. But there are lots of areas in which we need to increase spending for people, to give people a chance at a decent life, not just a chance at a decent life, to give them a decent life. So
Again, my only answer is you're going to end up with massive pushback from the right wing about how are you going to pay. And I do understand the concept of MMT. I do understand the concept of MMT, but you need to overcome public perception more than anything.
that's what the $1 trillion coin does. When you can show there's all that money in the Treasury spending account, that overcomes that.
They're gonna think that's monopoly money, Joe. People aren't going to be able to get their heads around
when
that.
they see
that
that
concept.
money, when they see that money paying down the natural debt at the rate of trillions per month, they will realize it isn't play money. From the standpoint of what they're worried about, quite a lot of them, which is the size of the debt, it's going to cut that in half within 2 years. It won't be 28 trillion anymore. It's going to be 14 trillion. Within 30 years, it's all going to be gone. It's going to be 0 trillion. Nothing. And they're going to see it go down year after year after year. I'm telling you, the debt will no longer be an issue within 6 months. And the deficit will no longer be an issue in 6 months unless people start to talk about inflation, which they will do. But of course, if inflation doesn't show up, then they're talking about inflation is not going to do any good. Yeah, they'll piss and they'll moan and they'll whine and they'll do every terroristic thing they possibly can. But when people see the results don't occur, all that is going to subside. Anyway, yes, MMT knowledge is very relevant here. But it's not about that as much as it is about spending on the right things that have good effects, okay, and good impacts. Okay. So where are we, Indy?
Where are we? We're coming up on about on 10:30. I kind of do need to run out in a few minutes because I do want to get out the evening edition. Again, I need to rearrange the stories on the website today. The website is independentleft.news. Once that happens, I have a whole process that I go through. Once I've rearranged the stories, I then create a summary document so that I can then copy and paste that into images and graphics that get uploaded to Instagram, to YouTube, to Twitter, to Vimeo, a whole host of different websites. You can find all of those websites at independentleft.media. That's a Linktree site that has a link to all my other sites. And then finally, the last thing I do is I publish a Substack, which embeds all of the videos that are summarized as well as the tweets that are grabbed that include a link to the article with a screenshot of the image.
So, how can people support your work?
Yeah. Well, again, you can subscribe at independentleft.news or indieleft.news. You can go to leftist.today. That is to sign up for the Substack. You can follow me on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter at IND Left News. You can see that up there. I do have a Patreon. I have a Substack. I'm not really looking to necessarily get paid for what I'm doing here tremendously. What I'm really interested in is amplifying the important independent voices that are out there that aren't being heard and need to be by the masses.
Okay, great.
And I appreciate everybody signing up, support, sharing. The biggest way you can support is to share the tweets and to share the articles that I share in Facebook groups, on Instagram, on Twitter, everywhere you possibly can.
Okay. So does that mean that you'll be leaving us?
I'm going to cut out for tonight, but I'll be happy to come back if you'll have me. This was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed myself.
I will certainly have you back. In fact, you have a standing invitation to come back, but I will suggest also certain times from time to time to
you know what I'd love to do, mate?
I'd love to talk to you some more, Indy.
You know what I'd love to do is get some of the people from our Replace Pelosi group that we had run and pull everybody together into a stream to have a little conversation and reminisce a little bit and talk about the way that group organically came together. Because let me tell you, that was one of the most incredible things I'd ever been part of. It was something I never had asked to be a part of necessarily, but I just got added to this group, and then energy, and this one was trying to do that, and this one's doing that, and then all of a sudden, everybody's really putting in a ton of work to make this happen, and we had it viral. We had it trending #2 on Twitter, and during our tweet storm, that was really exciting and a heck of a thing to be a part of. And
yeah, that was a great thing, but we never could get enough support to start to rival what Jimmy was doing.
Well, I think we
started a little too late.
Agreed.
Yeah,
but it was a lot of fun.
Too late. But if we had been able to do it, if we had been able to start early enough and get the suggestions out there, and if he would have picked up the idea of getting rid of Pelosi, which was such a better idea, then
we should have been looking at that from Election Day. From the day after Election Day, we should have been. But the truth is that the squad should have been also, and the Justice Democrats should have been looking at this from then.
They should.
Where were they for those 6 weeks? Okay, that is the big mystery that we'll never get the answer to, unfortunately. They were all, you know what it is? They were all hung over from the happiness that they had defeated Trump in their minds, whether they had or not. Trump was out. And he had lost. And
probably it was that, and probably it was also COVID. They were probably sticking close to home because of COVID.
Well, sure.
Those were the bad months.
Yep. Okay. Again, I really appreciate being here. Thanks again. I will see.
And I appreciate your being here. It was a wonderful conversation, and we're definitely going to do it again because this is really a blast.
All right. Take care, everybody. Have a great night. Thanks again.
Thank you, Indy. Have a wonderful night. Okay, folks, I am going to do my regular thing now and go back and entertain all your comments because, of course, we still have a little bit of time here. And keep on making the comments if you still got some other thoughts that came out of our discussion. For me, I thought this discussion had really tremendous energy, okay, between the two of us. That was really, really good. Okay, so, oh, and by the way, I should announce now that on Saturday night, I have another guest coming on. Kit Cabello is now scheduled to coming on the Hard Lens Media. And I'm sure he and I will have another very energetic discussion on the same subjects because he's a very energetic guy. And so I'm looking forward to another session like that. Carmen says, great description. Bernie got knifed. And Steve Wolfman says hello. I say, hey, Steve. Carmen says, I ran into a great news site today called DC. As Indie Left should collaborate with them too. I don't know whether Indie picked that up. Steve says, Steve Wolfbrand says, sounds like he's doing good work. I'm not familiar with him. Carmen says, hi, Hulk, you rock. And Reef Breland says, man, I love the little bird. Yeah. And my name is Jeff says, Indie Left is great. Evelina says hi. Steve Wolfbrand says hi. Kay says hi, Evelina. Evelyn says, hey, Kay. Carmen says, hell, the squad didn't even pressure Biden to hive us at the whole $2,000. Oh, to give us the whole $2,000. That's right. They didn't. And you know why they didn't? Okay, but you know why they didn't? Because they were originally for $2,000 and Trump came up with the $600 then. And so they had in their mind that there was the $1,400 difference. They might even have given Biden the idea that he could get away with only giving $1,400. However, Biden made the promise of $2,000 himself in Georgia. It was quite explicit.
It didn't even say that he was doing it.
Yes. Steve Wolfbrand said, yep, a disastrous defeat is ahead. Red Sea Socialist says, hi, Indy. Nice to see you, Red Sea Socialist. Russell says, yes, the $100 trillion coin would show up quickly. You bet it would. You bet it would. It's a game changer. It's a game changer. Even when Pont says, damn dinosaurs, how obvious it is they don't have to struggle to pay rent and put food on the table. Carmen says, the $100 trillion coin, 14 zeros. But Williamette, the fascists, the hell up. Well, I'm not sure I understand that. Steve says, Doc, how would the $100 trillion coin affect the bond markets? Well, it would probably tank the bond markets. Because, well, actually what would happen is this, okay? There are lots of bonds out there. Lots of bonds out there. So if the federal government mints a $100 trillion coin, then the implication would be the federal government would not be issuing any more bonds. The other implication is that it's a sure thing that the federal government is going to pay back the debt instruments it has there now. You know, it has out there now. So what happens to the bond markets? Each time somebody has a bond to sell, misspoke that. If the federal government starts paying down the short-term debt, the outstanding debt that it hasn't paid off becomes more valuable. Bonds are in much shorter supply. And therefore, the demand for what's still out there grows greater. If in a year, let's say in a year, you decrease the national debt from $28 trillion to $18 trillion, that $18 trillion of debt, each individual piece of that becomes more valuable. because there's no more government debt from the federal government going into the bond markets. That's one way it would affect the bond markets. For those who currently have bonds, it makes those bonds worth more. You can sell the bonds on the open market. Carmen says, goddamn autocorrect will shut the fascists up. Correction. Yeah, it'll shut the Austerians up. Russell says, why do our citizens not know where our money comes from? It's like they think that Star Trek's Jean-Luc Picard has to fly back into the past to make deposits into the U.S. Treasury. Hey, good metaphor there, Russ. Indy says, hey, everyone, at 9:31. Steve says, they did that to rescue the whales, laugh out loud. They did. That was a good flick, good flick. Even the Indy left does not know where and how the U.S. dollar comes from. This is a huge program. Yeah, Indy left probably discounts MMT, probably doesn't know much about MMT. That's true. Ghost Start has a number of icons there I can't read. K. Clark says, filibuster has to go. Now it does. Even this is because they don't want to admit to the American people that the purse is really always full. It's not that the purse is really always full. It's that the capability to always fill the purse is always there. That capability is always there as long as we maintain our monetary sovereignty. Now, they have ways of giving that away if they want to. And we have to be on guard that they never give that away. Evelina says the federal purse. Kay says carve out the filibuster then. Carmen says got to get the big picture and the filibuster. Kay says I hear Schumer can carve it out alone. Schumer can put up a carve out, but it's going to be necessary to get the votes of all 50 Democrats. There have to be all 50 Democrats in order to get that. They have to run the nuclear option, and then the chair has to make a ruling against the people who don't want the Constitution to apply. You see, the Constitution calls for a majority vote in the Senate. Okay? So, if the chair rules against the people who want the filibuster, then they have to defeat the motion to vote for something by majority vote with 60 votes. And of course, they've got only 50 votes on their side. Even if they peel off one or two Democrats to vote with them on that particular motion, they still won't have the filibuster anymore. The precedent is going to be established that the filibuster doesn't apply if they run the nuclear option. So that's what Schumer has to do. He has to run the nuclear option. And Biden and Harris have to be in favor of it. Biden and Harris and Schumer together can get rid of the filibuster any day they want to by running the nuclear option on a particular bill that the Republicans object to. For example, they could put up the minimum wage bill again in the Senate, introduce it on the floor, and call for a vote on it. If the Republicans filibuster it, then they can run the nuclear option. And if the chair decides that the objections based on the filibuster are out of order, then since the filibuster still applies, it's going to take 60 votes to defeat the point of order. And they're not going to have 60 votes. So the point of order stands. The point of order being that you only need a majority to pass a law. So the minimum wage bill passes, and a new precedent has been established. The precedent is that what's carved out in the Constitution actually applies, and that is that a majority of that a majority vote in the Senate is enough to pass legislation. So, Lana says, let's definitely discuss the general strike. We need details about where to donate for the needed supplies. Okay, and attorneys. Well, we have to lay out the plan. Okay, the plan for $1 a month from everybody for mutual aid to support strikes. It doesn't necessarily have to be a general strike. I think Indy's idea about having rotating strikes in industry after industry is a very good idea because it shares the pain. Or it shares the pain among the people, but it inflicts the pain to all the people sitting on the top. They lose a portion of their revenue and their profits because of the strike against their particular industry. In every industry, the people at the top start losing in their pocketbooks. That's why it's so important to have that. And if you have $200 billion coming in a month to support people engaged in these strikes, it becomes a very, very powerful weapon. So Kay says, not liking this much, Joe. Indy left doesn't sound too left to me. No, Indy left is pretty left. He's pretty left. As I think should have become clear after 948K. In other words, you made this comment 948, but as we proceeded forward, I think you can see that Indy left is pretty damn left. Lana says, if some people would stop 100% spitting venom every minute and sneering at them, they might listen more. I am referring to the progressives. Oh, you mean the progressives in Congress? No, they had already decided, Lana, not to listen to the bottom. They had already decided. They had a plan. It was going to involve working with Pelosi. They did get something. They did get the idea that PAYGO would not be applied to Medicare for All and that PAYGO would not be applied to the Green New Deal. The trouble was, that's all they got. They didn't get floor votes. They didn't get any rules changes. And they didn't get what they wanted in terms of good committee assignments. So, they did fail. Their strategy was not a good one. They needed input from the bottom, but they were not willing to get it. They were not willing to take it. And by the way, when we ran the Replace Pelosi January 3rd maneuver, they weren't listening to that. They had an opportunity to listen to that. We tweeted at them. We put tweets where they could see those things. They weren't thinking about it. They weren't picking up on it. They had decided that it wasn't about not me, us. They decided it was about them and what they were going to do in their new positions. That's really what happened. And by the way, they were following Bernie's lead. Because once he dropped out, he forgot about the not me, us movement. I mean, I know our revolution is still in existence, and it still tries to get money from people, and it does come out on various issues. But Bernie, in his operations in the Senate, is not about not me, us anymore. He's about doing what he thinks is right without any input from us or a buy or leave from us. Carmen says, Indy, we have a sadistic militarized police. We can't just revolt like other countries. Even the Gilets Jaunes lost eyes, arms, and lives, and their police don't use guns. Yes, that's true, Carmen, but compared to the total population of the United States, the military is still a relatively small group and can be overwhelmed by all of us if we come together. That can happen. Lana says, hashtag vacate the chair. Hashtag vacate the chair indeed. Evelina says, no $15 per hour. Okay, $17.50 then. Not that either. Okay, then $19. Carmen says, spot on, Lana. Snatch that chair right from under that ice cream Antoinette. You got it. Miss Antoinette, let them eat designer ice cream. Lana says Pelosi is the problem. She's one problem. Evelyn says, love it, Dr. Joe. Lana says, ice cream Antoinette, I love it, laugh out loud. We should start tweeting that at her. Designer ice cream Antoinette. Carmen says, laugh out loud. Thanks, Lana. Whose orders, Jayapal? I think it wasn't strictly speaking orders. It was like things came down through the grapevine from Bernie to Jayapal and to some other people he had worked with in the past. Probably like people on the squad. Said, look, Joe Biden's my friend. I think we can work with Joe Biden and we can get some valuable things out of Joe Biden. Nobody asked the question. Nobody asked us, are the things you can get from Joe Biden the things we want? Bernie's been marketing the $3.5 trillion bill, and he's been marketing it impressively. He's been talking about many good things in the $3.5 trillion bill if they can get it through. Yes, there are many good things, but they're not Medicare for all with people dying. They're not the Green New Deal with people dying. They're not student debt forgiveness. They're not stopping evictions with the housing crisis coming up. They're not the things that people need the most. They're things, they're crumbs Biden is ready to throw to people to alleviate some of the discontent, just the way Obama did, little crumbs. Steve says, Shakespeare, the first thing to do is kill all the lawyers, quote unquote. Kay says, we need Nina badly. Steve Walsh says, perhaps Nina could give the squad a spine, perhaps not. I don't think she could give them a spine on day one, but maybe she could start giving them some more spine. How much more spine would it have taken if we had 8 people, the 4 who were elected in 2018 and 4 more who were elected in 2020. If Nina had been elected to Congress in 2020 and she came in all spit and fire and active, and she tried to organize the others into a solid block of 9 to block Pelosi from being the speaker, that's all it would have taken. And she wasn't afraid of Pelosi yet. It would be like when AOC came in and she ran that strike with the Sunrise Movement in Pelosi's office. She was not afraid of Pelosi yet. She wasn't socialized to the system yet. Nina was in a position, a person like Nina would have been in a position to come in at that point and to organize the others and say, look, she can't hurt us if she's gone. Send her back to her grandchildren. We can ensure that she doesn't get in on January 3rd. We can have someone else come in. We can block anybody else who's not to the left of Nancy Pelosi. Carmen says, did the CPC members become too comfortable in Mama Bear's bed? I don't think they were that comfortable. I mean, the original 4 from the squad didn't get treated so well by Pelosi in their first 2 years that they loved her at the end of that time. I don't know where this Mama Bear shit came from. I really don't. I don't know what actually motivated that. Kay says she would try. Steve says TYT sucks. Carmen says you start by policy. Demonstrations are ineffective because you have to give the oppressors heads up and they will be glad to fuck the protesters up. It depends on what kinds of demonstrations there are. And we didn't have a lot of fucking protesters up on last Saturday's marches. They were all relatively peaceful as far as I know. So we get to have those kinds of marches. We can get to have and organize economic boycotts. We can create that kind of fund to try to get $1 a month from every American and maybe get 200 million of them to give the $1 a month. I mean, that can be done. Steve Wolfbrand says general strike. I doubt that many would stay away from their jobs, but we could definitely march in the streets. Well, maybe some would stay away. Those who could afford to might stay away from their jobs. There are different ways to do a general strike. In other words, one can do sit-ins. One can do slowdowns. There's all kinds of things we can do if we're really determined to do it. The Gilets jaunes created fits for France, and they did win certain concessions. Kay says, Bernie and the squad say they will not vote for the bipartisan bill unless the reconciliation bill gets passed. I say they better not cave on that, because it will have been the first time they stood up on their hind legs and said, no. If the reconciliation bill doesn't get passed, surely the bipartisan bill should not get passed. I don't care if Biden comes up with shit. It's his fault. It's his fault because he can forgive student debt. He can give everybody Medicare for all. He can mint the $100 trillion coin. Those are good things he can do to change politics quickly and to get himself much more popular so he can squeeze cinema and Manchin. By the way, Chris Coons is not going to vote against what Joe Biden wants. Never in a million years. Evelina says Pelosi. Steve says Biden. Carmen says, there's a peer funding going on? I don't know. For October 15th, I don't know. We need hackers to hack donor accounts to politicians. I'm not such a hacker. Anyway, but Carmen, you can probably Google the general strike October 15th and who's putting out the word on that, and maybe there are funds for that. Carmen says techies could save democracy. Yeah, the problem is, are techies in favor of democracy? Are they all freaking libertarians? Kay says, I love Professor Wolf. Carmen says, I'm not a Wolf fan. Lana says, to handle the dollars, yes, Barbara and Marianne Williamson, yes. They will need food, dollars for rent and bills, plus attorneys get people out of jail if they march or protest. Steve Wilpert says GameStop. I mentioned the Strikers Fund when Jeffrey Ginton, remember? I bet Bonnie remembers. I think you're saying when Jeffrey Ginter was here on this program. Yes. Yeah. I cannot get arrested because I would lose my job, but I will contribute to a strike fund. We need to talk to Jeff Ginter. There are many people, but by the way, who would contribute $5 a month to such a strike fund, or $10 a month to such a strike fund, or maybe even $20 a month to such a strike fund. There are millions and millions of people who would contribute to this. There might not need to be contributions from 200 million people. Contributions from 100 million people might be enough to produce that 200 billion a month. I'm sorry, to produce that 200 million a month. Sorry, I got my millions and billions mixed up. Steve, run the stock up and dump it all at once. Carmen says Jeffrey agreed. KRTD Media says great interview. Common User says end consumerism. And the political and economic landscape will change for the better. Fuck iPhones. Yeah. Alana says, what website is he talking about? He may be talking about his own website. So take a look for his own website. I started off this comment stream on YouTube with a link to Indie Left. It's at 8:57 p.m. If you go back to the first comment in the stream, if you click on that, it will get you into the whole tree of links, of Indie Left, including his website. Okay? So that's the way you can easily access that. I'll also be putting it into the description of this on YouTube and on Facebook after the show, because I have control over that particular description. And I don't have control over the description on KRTD Media, I don't think. But Shane is here, and he can certainly make that addition even if I can't. Let's see. I have to get back to where I was. Lana says, what website is he talking about? It's probably his website. Carmen says, Indy doesn't get quite MMT yet. Well, if I have Indy on a few more times, he'll get it a lot better. But Lana Dell says, we don't want to talk about reduced spending up front. Definitely needs to be done. Don't put it ahead of spending we need for other things. Absolutely. KRTD Media, only thing mainstream media really pays attention to is money. Carmen says, MMT is not a concept, right? MMT is, it's an approach to economics that uses a particular conceptual framework, which Stephanie Kelton calls a lens, because the conceptual framework is a lens. It is a way of seeing things. So that is what MMT is. There are a lot of elements to that lens. If you're interested, I have an article on what kinds of elements, but numerous different elements and components. And Lana Dell says it is monopoly money. The federal government is the monopolist. It is. KRTD Media says there's 100 million or more raised in a month. MSNBC, Fox, and CNN would be talking about it. Yeah, doing everything they can to try to stop it. We need 200 million a month, though, because we need to get to that 600 billion in 3 months. Indy, I recommend you watch Joe's segments of In Depth, where he covers the deficit math book. Maybe Indy will pick up on that. Maybe not. But we can always tell Indy by going to his own sites and making that comment. Steve Wolfbrand Biden is so demented he might spend a $100 trillion coin on a cup of coffee at the 7-Eleven. He can't do that because that wasn't appropriated by Congress. KRTD Media. But we should cut military spending. We should. Anna says we should cut military spending, but starting our arguments there is a dead end. And Steve Wolfbrand says, thank you, Indy. Lana says, great to have you, Indy. Laura says, Piers, thank you, Indy. Kit Cabello, he is the co-chair or co-director of Hardlands Media. He is okay, Carmen said, the military is the only federal jobs guarantee going on right now. Lana Dell says, ooh, I like it. Then we can go for vacate the chair. Lana says, yes, we were late to the party, but still, let's keep going. Steve says AOC loves her mama bear. Steve Wolfman said it was a good convo. Thank you, Steve. Steve says, "Oh, really, Kit?" Yes, Kit. And Laura says, "Saturday with Kit sounds like a great show. Looking forward to the energetic discussion." KRTD says, "Media, this was a great interview. The Kit one will be great also." Ghost Start says, but PSA using the remaining meta after removing the Big Bang study shows increased effectiveness with ivermectin, although with less confidence due to the corrupted study's absence. Yes, that's true. That's absolutely true. I watched that same video, I think, okay, that you did with the reporter who was making an effort to be absolutely objective. Okay, and he had on but Tess Lowry. Okay, and I forget the name of the other guy. Okay, who was against ivermectin, and he moderated what was essentially a debate. Okay, between the two of them, and I think that Tess Lowry kind of won that particular debate. But also, there's a lot of contextual evidence in favor of ivermectin being effective in country after country when it has been used. Steve says, "Pretty sure Kit can bring over some of his own fans to watch. I'll bet he can." Carmen says, "Joe, can you get Dave Dayen on the show?" I think I probably can get Dave Dayen on the show. He probably remembers me from our Fire Dog Late days. But I would like to get greater attendance here first so I can offer him a larger group of people. But maybe Kit can spur that. We'll see. Okay. Or maybe the idea of getting more and more interviews, having 2 interviews a week now, will get me the larger size. I mean, even if I was sure I could get 30 people coming, okay, I would ask Dave to come on. Kay says, "Who is Kit? Haven't heard of him. He's the head of Hardlands Media. We need to find a way to corner cinema and ask her exactly why she has a problem with the size of the infrastructure bill. She gave no reason, just she thinks it's too big, but too much. Why? Anyone, okay, in Arizona, she's never going to give you a reason. She doesn't really have reasons. The reason why she has a problem with the size of the infrastructure bill is because Joe Manchin has a problem with the size of the infrastructure bill. It's probably also because she believes the deficits should not be too large. Why? Because her donors are worried about the deficit getting too large and us having inflation, or it's just because the group she runs with thinks the infrastructure bill is too large. She'll give you some talking points. She won't have any depth to her understanding of why it is too large, because she is too uneducated for that. I don't think she's too stupid for that. I don't know how smart or stupid she is, but I do think she is very shallow in her policy views. I've never seen her make an expression of policy, an explanation of policy that had any depth to it, okay, at all. She's going to rely on Peterson Foundation tropes about why the size of the infrastructure bill should be smaller. Anyway, Kit Cabello just emceed the Medicare for All March in Chicago. One of the things we're going to talk to him about, okay, is that. But he's been live streaming now for a long time, and he and his co-host Dan Lepker are quite popular and have they have a good lefty program. I have the impression they don't know much about MMT. Whether they've recently learned more, I don't know. They're probably pretty good on infrastructure and probably pretty good, okay, at Medicare for All, and probably be, pretty good on the Green New Deal and certain other issues. And their instincts are very lefty. In that way, they're like us. Lana says, we need to find what I went through this already. Steve Wolprin said, he's the co-host of a fairly popular hot podcast, Hardlands Media. Yes, cases. Oh, I know him now. Lana says, following Bernie's lead, sad. I don't mean I dislike Bernie, but I thought they were following Jayapal's lead. They probably are. They're probably Bernie has let out to all the CPC members, because Bernie, by the way, is still a member of the CPC. He's the only member of the CPC who's a senator. He was one of the founders of the CPC, and he remained in it. So he probably has sent some messages to them concerning the general political lay of the land and what he thinks the CPC should be working on and should be trying for, and what they should not be investing their time in. Okay, now, of course, the chair of the CPC is Jayapal. And so she has a continuing influence far more on a day-to-day basis than Bernie has. But if she agrees with Bernie, if she is following Bernie's lead, and a number of the others are following Bernie's lead, it's quite likely that people who work with Bernie on his campaigns, such as AOC and Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib, that they would all be following Bernie's lead too. Carmen says, I know when AOC was all cuddly with Mama Bear, it was over. I'm not left anymore. I'm far east. And laugh out loud. And Steve says, I'll drop a super chat at Hardlands Media to advertise the Saturday show. Thank you, Steve. That's very nice. Lana says, I kind of wish people would stop dredging up Mama Bear. AOC said that over 2 years ago, one time right after she was elected. To my knowledge, she has never said it again. I thought she said it more recently, like last fall sometime. Ghost Art says Far East, and Lana says Carmen, Far East, but laugh out loud. Lana says, I'm very interested in the intermittent strikes over and over. Me too. That's very good. Very good concept. Lana says, that way more and more people will participate over time. Love it. That's right. That's right. They'll probably be happy to participate over time, a day or two each time. Carmen says, that's true, Lana. Let's hope the general strike goes over splendiferously. And Lana says, I see them in the first comment, right? Carmen, so much better than just one day. Hard to get enough people to discuss these details. Yes. Well, maybe we'd get something going on Twitter that could spread this to people. Carmen says churches could put up strikers like an Underground Railroad 2021 type movement. Indeed. Okay, folks, I think we're now through it. Thank you for coming. Thank you for staying as usual. Thank you for participating in all the energy. I thought this was really a very good stream. So thanks a lot. I'll be back tomorrow with news treatment, KN News Analysis. And as I say, I expect to be back on Saturday with Kit Cabello at this point. Okay. So if anything changes on that score, I certainly will let everybody know. But as of the beginning of this week, he had agreed to come on. So there we are. Okay, Case says, Steve says, perhaps Kit could have you on his show as an MMT guest, but you could plug your own show. That's how it's done. Or Sabby Sabs is having a lot of guests as well. Thank you, Steve. Those are certainly possibilities. We're going to be running more panel shows on KRTD Media, okay, as well. I'll be coming into contact with a lot of these people then also. Kay says, thank you all for a great discussion. But I love you all, and we love you, Kay. Good night, everybody. Have a great night. I'll see you tomorrow night.